religious minority that has saved this nation. And that's where we are now, folks. That is exactly where we are now. This is a time that our faith is going to be tested. This is a time we're expected to show courage. This is a time we're expected to stand up for what is right and occupy till He comes. This is our time. We're all going to be held accountable for what we do and we don't do. You know, for he who knows the right thing to do but does not do it, for him it is a sin. It's not just not doing bad stuff. It is when you're called to do good stuff, you are expected to do it. And it's a sin if you do not. And that is, I think, lost on many American Christians today. They think living a good life, being faithful, saying your prayers, going to church every Sunday is enough. But when your country is falling into chaos and you stand between, you are all that's left to save this country from savagery, and you do not, you are just as guilty as the savages. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
You know, it's famous, the German Christians, the famous story about the German Christians could have stopped Hitler. They had enough numbers, they had enough moral authority, but they chose to be good German Nazis, good Christian Nazis. They put swastikas in their churches. The famous little story about a little church, it might not even be true, but it illustrates the point. A little church right on a railway station in the middle of World War II, and the parishioners are all singing on a Sunday morning, and a train pulls up and it's got boxcars, and they hear screaming and banging from inside the boxcars. Give us water, we are starving, give us water, help us, help us, help us. Jews going to Buchenwald or Auschwitz. And what did those German Christians do? They sang louder. So they are probably all dead now, unless they're 120 years old. And I'm sure they all live very good lives. I'm sure they're very honest people. I'm sure they went to church every Sunday. I'm sure they diligently said their prayers. I'm sure they read their Bible every night. I'm sure they thought they were all going to go to heaven. But when it came down to love their neighbours as thyself and to risk their lives to help others in a dire situation, they failed. So I don't know where they are now, folks, but I wouldn't be quite as sure that they all went to heaven as they were. You know, this is our time now. If we do not save this country, we'll be responsible for the biggest slaughter in world history. We will be responsible for allowing North Korea all over the world with American surveillance technology. That's what we were responsible for. That's what we're facing if we don't stand up. Does anybody think I'm exaggerating on that, folks? So this is our time. This is our time. And I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I'll tell you what. You know, those German Christians, I think the blood of World War II is on their head. They let it happen. And young American Christian boys, 18, 19 years old, off farms in Iowa and Nebraska, had to put on uniforms and pick up guns and storm German machine guns at the beaches of Normandy, to island hop across the Pacific fighting malaria and the Japanese army and kamikaze pilots. They had to fix the mess that had been made by the German Christians. Well, when I come to account, I'd rather be an 18-year-old boy, an 18-year-old kid who died on the beaches of Normandy than a 90-year-old German Christian who thought he was doing the right thing. What would you rather be, folks? What would you rather be? So this is our time, folks. We may sacrifice. We may lose our lives in this. We may lose our businesses. We may be persecuted. We may be jailed. But all of us are going to be held to a higher account one day. Doesn't really matter if we lose our house. Doesn't really matter if we are persecuted. Because I know if we make decisions based on eternity, not the next few years, we're going to do act differently than we are now. And I know that when the end comes to all of us, which it will, we got to be able to hold our heads up high and say, I was a good and faithful servant. Is anything worth more than that, folks? Is there anything worth more than that in the long term? So that is where we are, people. We're in a crisis time where our country is on the verge of being lost. And I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know whether we're going to win or lose. I think that 2016 election convinced me that God is not finished with this country yet. He gave us a reprieve then. But we have to make full advantage of that reprieve, or we are going to regret it for the rest of our days. So if we have to sacrifice, we might have to sacrifice and we might have to give up a lot, but we are not storming the beaches of Normandy. We're not having to do what our founding fathers did, fight battles against the British for year after year after year, freezing and starving in the snow, never being paid for months, away from our families for months and months and months at a time. We don't have to do that, but we do have to get involved in every single way we can. We have to commit ourselves to transforming our churches, cleaning our own lives up if they need to be cleaned up, and we have to commit ourselves to preserving the greatest nation the world ever gave, that God ever gave this planet. That's our responsibility. Does anybody think that's wrong? It's our responsibility, folks. And we are in such a position. And I think that is an awesome privilege. It may be a big responsibility, but it's also an awesome privilege. Because we're going to be tested for our faith and our courage like nobody has been for a long time. And I think that's something to be welcomed. I think that's a gift, and we need to look at it that way. Yes, there will be suffering, but the reward at the end of it will far outweigh any suffering we endure on this planet. That's what I believe. So I want to say thank you so much for listening. I'm very up for any questions or challenges, or just, where I've got it wrong, or where I've misunderstood things. Because if I'm wrong now, I'd like to know it now, but rather make a fool of myself around the country any longer. But I think I really hope you'll get that movie, maybe the book and whatever, but especially the movie, and watch it yourself, because I think this will answer the question for you, what's gone wrong in the churches and what we can do to bring them back. That's what we did it for. It took us 3 years to make it. It's our only reason we did it. We could have made a lot more money doing other things in the meantime. But we think the churches need to start leading again, otherwise we'll lose this country. That's what I say.